They never really saw me, not in the way that mattered. In the Hayes family, visibility was earned through compliance, charm, or being Carla. My older sister was the golden child, born with good hair, good grades, and good timing. Everything she touched was celebrated. Her piano recitals, her poetry contests, her slightly above-average GPA. I, Rebecca, the second daughter, arrived as a footnote in someone else's highlight reel. Mom Eleanor used to say, "Carla's always been more presentable." She never said I was bad, just that Carla was better. "Don't slouch, Rebecca. Smile more. Your sister would never speak to me like that." It wasn't abuse. It was erosion. A slow sanding down of my spirit until I learned that love in our house had rules. Rules I never quite understood. The earliest memory I have of feeling invisible was at my 6th birthday. I asked for an art kit. Carla got a karaoke machine. I got a 3-pack of glitter pens and a firm reminder not to make a mess on the carpet. Later that day, Carla performed "Wind Beneath My Wings" for our relatives while I cleared paper plates off the table. Everyone clapped. I pretended the applause was for me. As we grew older, Carla became the family's emblem of success. She married early, had a baby at 21, divorced with flair, then moved back home to help out. I, on the other hand, left home the moment I could. At 18, I packed my bags and boarded a bus out of rural New Hampshire with $140 in my pocket and no intention of ever looking back. My father, Walter, didn't say goodbye. He didn't hug me or tell me to be careful. He just sipped his coffee and muttered, "Let us know where you land." Mom barely looked up from her crossword puzzle. I remember thinking, this is the last time I'll ever be just a shadow in someone else's house. College wasn't glamorous. I worked the night shift at a grocery store, cleaned houses on weekends, and shared a studio apartment with 2 other girls who never did dishes. But it was mine. My life, my choices, my hard-earned silence. I didn't call home. I didn't send postcards. I didn't owe them anything anymore. By my late 20s, I had a bachelor's degree, a mountain of student debt, and a part-time job at a design studio. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something I built myself. And more importantly, it was mine. I met Mark a few years later at a design expo in Boston. He was working a booth for sustainable wood furniture, wearing a rumpled flannel shirt and nerdy glasses that made him look like a college professor who'd taken a wrong turn. We talked about craft, value, and what it meant to create something lasting. He didn't ask about my family. I didn't volunteer. Mark and I started dating, then building, first a business, then a life. We opened a workshop together in Portland, lived above it for the first year, survived on caffeine and Craigslist sales. Slowly things grew. Our client list expanded. The business stabilized. We bought a small house near the coast and started talking about the future in present tense. But even as success came, something inside me stayed alert. I had this tick, this compulsion to double-check every contract, to keep all titles in my name, to question every smile that felt too smooth. Mark called it healthy paranoia. I called it memory. When you grow up knowing love can be revoked at any moment, you don't sign anything without a lawyer present. Still, despite everything I'd built, the wound never fully healed. There was a part of me, buried under layers of cold logic and iron will, that still wondered what it might feel like to be wanted. Not needed, not tolerated, just wanted. I didn't know then that the people who once ignored me would find their way back. Not to reconnect. Not to make amends. But to take everything I had fought for, one signature at a time. Success looks glamorous from the outside. A sleek website, custom branding, artisan craftsmanship. All the trappings of a curated life. But behind ours was a leaky ceiling, a broken heater, and years of sleeping in a workshop that smelled like sawdust and desperation. Mark and I didn't build our business out of passion. We built it out of survival. Our first space was a converted auto garage with a concrete floor and one flickering overhead light. He handled the furniture, I did interior layouts and concept staging. We called it Hayes and Home. We thought the name sounded professional. Really, it just sounded like 2 people trying to make rent. There were nights we worked until 3 a.m., surviving on boxed mac and cheese and burnt coffee. Our clients were local handymen, small-time house flippers, anyone who could pay cash up front. I remember scrubbing grout with a toothbrush while Mark cut wood in the back. Both of us too tired to speak but too scared to stop. We weren't building an empire. We were just trying to stay afloat. Year 1 we made less than 20 grand. Year 2 we doubled that. By year 3 we were in the black and finally moved out of the workshop into a tiny rental with a real bed. I cried the first night we slept in it. Not because it was nice, it wasn't, but because it didn't smell like polyurethane and mold. Mark proposed the following spring. I said yes on one condition: full legal clarity. We went to a lawyer the next week. I wanted a prenup, clear asset delineation, and an LLC structure that separated business from personal property. Mark didn't even flinch. Whatever makes you feel safe, he said. I trust you. That's when I hired Joanne Miller. She was lean, sharp-eyed, and never smiled unless it was to gut someone in negotiations. She wasn't just our lawyer, she became my quiet guardian. Every quarter she reviewed our financials. Every expansion went through her. She didn't just handle legalities, she anticipated vulnerabilities. I didn't explain my history. She didn't ask. But I think she knew. Anyone ever try to come for this? She asked once, reviewing a deed transfer. Not yet, I said. Then we keep it that way. By year 5, Hayes & Home had a full staff of 6, 2 delivery trucks, and a wait list of mid-range designers begging for custom pieces. We bought our first house, an old colonial near the coast that needed everything fixed. But we loved it. Every floorboard, every crooked window felt earned. I put it in my name. Not out of distrust. Out of discipline. Mark understood. That's what made him different. He never needed to be the center. He was the kind of man who didn't mind being the structure, not the spotlight. And in return I gave him everything, except blind trust. That I reserved for no one. We built more than a business. We built a routine, a rhythm, a kind of sanctuary. Our friends called us boring. We called it peaceful. Every Sunday we walked to the farmer's market. Every new year we wrote down our goals and burned the old ones in the fireplace. We were content. Predictable. Until one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in 15 years. Carla. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then came the voicemail. Her voice was syrupy, almost giddy. Hey Beck. Long time. Just wanted to reconnect. Lily keeps asking about her cool aunt. Cool aunt? She hadn't called me that since college and never to my face. I stared at the phone, heart drumming against my ribs. Mark looked over. Everything okay? I nodded. Just a ghost from the past. But ghosts don't call. They haunt. And this one had just knocked on my door. Started with a voicemail, then a text, then an email that felt like it had been drafted by a PR team. Carla wrote in full sentences now. Punctuation, capitalization, even warmth. We've missed you, it said. Mom and Dad would love to reconnect. Lily's been asking about you. Maybe we could get together sometime soon. I didn't respond. 3 days later, Mark found a package on the porch. Inside was a photo of Lily holding a handmade sign. Hi Aunt Rebecca. Alongside it was a card drawn in glitter pen. A messy heart scribbled next to the words, I love your furniture. Mommy showed me your website. That one cracked something open. I hadn't seen Lily since she was a baby, and even then, only briefly during one forced Thanksgiving appearance before I'd vanished for good. But she was a child. A clean slate. Innocent. And if she really wanted to know me, did I have the right to deny her? Mark watched me read the note. We could go, he said. Just dinner. See what they want. Might not be so bad. That's the thing about people like Mark. They believe in resolution. They think closure is possible. I'd grown up knowing it wasn't. Still, against every instinct in me, I said yes. The dinner was set for a Sunday. Their house hadn't changed. Same siding, same cracked driveway, same ceramic frog by the front step that I'd always hated. Mom opened the door with a showman's smile. Rebecca. Oh honey. You look wonderful. She hugged me like we weren't strangers. Walter offered a handshake, firm and brief. Carla nearly ran down the stairs. Oh my God, look at you. You haven't aged a day. Lily barreled in behind her, beaming. Aunt Rebecca, she yelled, flinging her arms around me. And just like that, I forgot how to stay angry. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Roast chicken, potatoes, wine. Like a script they'd rehearsed. Carla chatted nonstop about Lily's school. Mom dropped compliments about my business. And Walter nodded solemnly like he was endorsing every word. Mark smiled through it all, clearly relieved. Me. I felt the ghost of belonging brush against me, just enough to stir old wounds. After dessert, Mom cleared her throat. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Truly. And we were thinking, well, with retirement coming up and the market being so unpredictable, maybe this is the time to do something together. Carla jumped in. We've been researching investment strategies, real estate passive income models. Mom and Dad want to create something that benefits all of us, like a family portfolio. We'd all contribute. We'd all gain. I blinked. You want to go into business together? No, not like that, Carla said quickly. Just something safe. Something under all our names. That way it's protected. Future-proofed. Mark nodded, interested. That could make sense in the right structure. I shot him a glance. Mom leaned in, voice soft. Honey, we know how much you've worked for. We're not asking for handouts. We just want to create something meaningful. While we still can. The words were carefully chosen. Nothing demanding. Nothing overt. But they were planting flags. Testing the soil. Looking for weak spots. On the way home, Mark was quiet. Then, they're trying. That was more effort than I expected. I stared out the window. Yeah, I said. They're trying. What I didn't say was that people like them never ask unless they already have a plan. And when Eleanor smiles that much, it's because she thinks she's winning. It started small, as it always does. A shift in tone. A word used too deliberately. Mark mentioned offhandedly that he'd stopped by my parents' house one afternoon. He was dropping off some old shelving plans Walter had asked for, and somehow ended up staying for lunch. Walter said they're looking into reactivating that property in Ashmont, Mark told me over dinner. He asked if I could help with a couple forms, just basics, ownership stuff. Said it was part of the family venture idea. I put my fork down. What forms? He paused, chewing slower. Just some authorizations. I didn't sign anything major. It was already filled out. Looked like a standard release form for property access. My pulse ticked up. Did it have my name on it? He looked up. Yeah, actually, but they said it was fine. They just needed my signature as a co-executor. Since we're married. Co-executor. I didn't remember giving Walter that title. In fact, I was sure I never had. That night I emailed Joanne. 2 days later we sat in her office while she slid a document across the table, her expression flat. They used that form to gain joint access to a dormant family trust that your father still had partial control over. But with Mark's signature and your name pre-filled, they effectively gave themselves legal standing to access funds held under Hayes and Holmes' early LLC umbrella. I felt the room tilt slightly. Joanne continued. This trust holds a minority stake in your original business registration. It was inactive for years. But now, they've quietly reactivated it. And they've been moving paperwork fast. Mark looked horrified. I thought I was helping. I didn't realize. Joanne held up a hand. This wasn't your fault. They baited you. But from a legal standpoint, you've just invited them into your financial ecosystem. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My fingers clenched around the paper in front of me, trying to read between the lines that someone else had already written over me. That night I went through every email Carla had sent over the past 2 months. Most were fluff, photos of Lily, inspirational quotes, jokes about how boring adulthood is. But one stood out. It was an attachment labeled, Draft Proposal, Family Investment Strategy. I'd opened it once. Skimmed. Ignored. Now I opened it again. On page 3 was a line item I hadn't seen before. Suggested transfer of property rights, Rebecca Hayes to CPF Holdings, managed by Carla F. Patterson. My full name appeared beside a digital signature. Dated. Filed. Stamped. Except I had never signed it. The loops were close. The slant, the flourish of the R, almost perfect. If I hadn't spent years designing furniture with precision down to the millimeter, I might have missed it. But it wasn't my signature. I emailed Joanne a copy. Her reply came within the hour. This qualifies as forgery. We act now or we risk losing everything. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen, Mark pacing behind me like a ghost. All the warm dinners, the reconnection, the compliments, none of it had been real. It was a performance and we had been their audience. But I wasn't clapping anymore. They think I'm still that little girl, I whispered. The one who smiled through being ignored. But I'm not. Not anymore. Mark stopped pacing. What do we do? I turned to him, voice steady. We fight. Because this wasn't just about property or money. It was about invasion. Manipulation. Control. And I was done playing nice. The invitation came in a padded envelope with a gold-embossed return address. CPF Holdings. Carla had really gone all in. Inside was a formal letter titled Family Financial Alignment Summit. Beneath that, a printed agenda sample portfolio, and a thinly veiled threat disguised as warmth. We're excited to finally build something together. Mark read it twice. This feels corporate. It's supposed to, I said. That's how they get you to let your guard down. But I wasn't caught off guard. Not this time. Joanne and I had been preparing for weeks. We reviewed every document, every forged signature, and traced every shadow account they'd quietly resurrected. We didn't go to that meeting to learn. We went to end it. It was held at a boutique co-working space downtown, the kind with concrete walls, Edison bulbs, and pretentious water dispensers. Carla was already there when we arrived, standing in front of a projection screen with a fake laugh smile plastered across her face. Walter sat at the end of the table flipping through a leather portfolio. Eleanor wore a pearl necklace and a look of rehearsed concern. "Rebecca," Carla said brightly, "we're so glad you came. And Mark too. We know how much this means to everyone." I gave a small nod. Joanne walked in behind us, calm and unreadable. "This is Joanne Miller," I said. "Our legal advisor." Eleanor stiffened. "Is that necessary?" "It is now," I said. Carla pressed her hands together. "Let's just get through the presentation. Then we can go over the documents and sign where needed." The screen lit up. A slideshow began. The Hayes family vision. Building a legacy. Bar graphs. Pie charts. Vague talk of shared wealth and stability for future generations. I watched silently as Carla pitched their fantasy like a seasoned executive. She even had a laser pointer. Then came the real agenda. "Here's the operating agreement," she said, passing around a stack of papers. "If we all sign today, we can file by end of week. Rebecca, your portion will flow directly through CPF Holdings so we can streamline taxes." She handed me a pen. I didn't take it. Instead, I looked at Joanne. She pulled a red-marked packet from her briefcase and slid it across the table. "This," she said, "is a certified copy of a forged document bearing Rebecca's signature. It was submitted 2 weeks ago to the registrar's office, tied to a false property transfer." Carla's face froze. Walter looked up, expression unreadable. Eleanor set her wine glass down, the clink louder than necessary. Joanne continued. "We have IP logs tracing the submission back to Carla's home network, bank transfers from CPF Holdings to a private investment account in Carla's name, and an audio file, also time-stamped, in which Walter refers to Rebecca's assets as collateral for family leverage." Carla tried to speak. That's not. "It is," I said, voice flat. "And it's all been forwarded to the authorities, including your digital signature logs and your attempt to pressure Mark into co-signing authorization forms under false pretense." Walter stood up. "You don't have to escalate this." "I didn't escalate it," I snapped. "You did when you used my name without my consent." Eleanor's lips tightened. "We're your family." "No," I said, standing. "Family doesn't set traps. They don't lie. And they don't steal." The room went silent. Joanne packed up her folder. Mark stood beside me, his jaw locked. Carla's voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Because I wouldn't. It didn't take long. 3 days after the meeting, Carla and Eleanor appeared on Morning Matters, a regional daytime show with just enough viewership to ruin someone's reputation. The segment was called When Families Break, A Mother's Plea for Peace. They sat side by side, both dressed in soft blues, like mourning doves at a funeral no one had died at. The host leaned in sympathetically. "So tell us what happened with your daughter." Eleanor sighed dramatically. "Rebecca was always brilliant, driven. But she changed. After the business took off, she started pulling away. She didn't want to include us in anything. We tried to reconnect, to build something together. But she accused us of things we'd never dream of doing." Carla chimed in. "She's always been suspicious. Controlling. Everything had to be her way. We were just trying to create a legacy for Lily. For our whole family." The host nodded gravely. "So you were trying to bring the family together?" "Yes," Carla said, voice trembling. And now she won't even let Lily call her. That line hit like a punch. I was standing in the kitchen, mug in hand, watching the live stream on my laptop. The chat was exploding. She sounds toxic. Greedy. Bet she'll die alone. Why do rich kids always forget their roots? Mark shut the laptop. That's enough. But it wasn't. Because 2 hours later the real damage arrived. A letter. Written in purple marker with misspelled words and a heart in the corner. From Lily. Aunt Rebecca. Mom said you don't love us anymore. You made her cry. He cried a lot. I don't want to talk to you right now. Maybe later. Bye. Lily. I read it over and over until the words blurred. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for the first time in years. Not because I cared what strangers thought. Not because Carla and Eleanor had dragged me through public mud. But because a child I loved had been weaponized like a tool. Mark sat down next to me, rubbing my back in slow circles. They poisoned her, I said. They turned her into a pawn. She's a kid, he said softly. She'll find her way back. But I wasn't so sure. Because the kind of damage that comes from betrayal isn't always visible. Sometimes it seeps in through love, through innocence, until it rewires everything. I stopped going online. Joanne handled all communications. Mark filtered my calls. But I couldn't unsee that clip. Couldn't unhear the smug tremble in Carla's voice. Couldn't forget that Eleanor wiped away tears that never touched her eyes. In quiet moments, I caught myself staring at Lily's old drawings still stuck to the side of the fridge. A pink unicorn. A crooked heart with the words, "Best aunt ever." I should have thrown them out. I couldn't. The media storm didn't last long. People moved on to fresher drama. But the echo lingered. Whispered in boardrooms, in inboxes, in cold stares from former friends who didn't bother asking my side. It wasn't just reputation they tried to steal. It was the last fragile piece of human connection I'd let myself have. And it worked. For a while. But then something in me hardened. Crystallized. You don't win wars by feeling sorry for yourself. You win by finishing what they started. The lawsuit arrived in a manila envelope marked urgent. Carla had filed a civil complaint accusing me of breaching fiduciary duty and withholding family assets. The language was surgical: intentional exclusion, willful obstruction, unlawful control of legacy funds. She was suing me for over $800,000 and seeking partial ownership of Hayes and Home under the pretense that family labor had contributed to early development. Mark read it aloud in disbelief. She's framing this like she helped build the company. She's framing it like I stole from her, I said too calmly. Because anger wasn't useful anymore. Precision was. Joanne's reaction was colder. They just handed us their necks, she said, flipping through the complaint. How we tighten the rope. What followed was 2 months of forensic excavation. Joanne and her team dug through years of financials, bank transfers, domain IP logs, email metadata. She assembled a legal missile. The forged signature, the fake documents, the unauthorized filings, and our crown jewel, a voicemail left by Carla to her attorney's assistant, accidentally sent to Joanne's office line. If she finds out I forged it, Carla's voice hissed through the speaker, we'll just say Mark was confused. She'll take the fall for embarrassing him publicly. That was it. Intent. Malice. Deception. The court date was set. They walked into the courtroom like they still believed they could win. Carla wore a fitted navy suit and glossy lipstick. Eleanor clutched a tissue before the judge even entered. Walter didn't look at me once. He just kept his gaze down, like if he didn't see me I couldn't see him unraveling. Our side didn't posture. We didn't cry. Joanne opened with a precise, damning presentation. Timestamps, forged docs, login trails, Carla's voicemail. He played it in full. The silence in the courtroom afterward was the kind that bends air. When it was Carla's turn, she broke halfway through her own testimony. Tears came, real this time, but not of remorse. Of panic. She contradicted herself twice. The judge asked her to clarify. She couldn't. Eleanor tried to recover ground. Claimed she never saw the documents. Joanne presented emails she'd been CC'd on. Walter mumbled something about being misled. Joanne played a recording of him describing my company as a security blanket we're owed. The judge didn't need long. The ruling came swift and clear. The case was dismissed. Carla was ordered to pay court costs. A referral for criminal investigation into document forgery was sent to the DA's office. Eleanor and Walter were cited for civil misconduct. Their accounts were frozen pending audit. Joanne smiled for the first time in 2 years. Outside the courthouse, a reporter tried to ambush me. "Any comments about the verdict? About your family?" I looked her dead in the eye. They thought love was leverage. It wasn't. We walked away. Back at home, I found Lily's drawing still folded in the drawer. The one that said, "I don't want to talk to you right now." I unfolded it again. For a long time I just stared. Mark stood behind me. "It's over," he said. "No," I thought. "It's only just beginning. Because peace doesn't come after war. It comes after you clean up the rubble." 2 months passed before the final letter came. It wasn't from Carla. Not Eleanor. Not Walter. It was from Lily. The envelope was pale yellow with little stars drawn on the back in silver pen. Inside was a simple card, hand-folded, edges uneven, like it had been cut with dull scissors. On the front was a butterfly made of construction paper and too much glue. Inside, in careful block letters, "Dear Aunt Rebecca, I'm sorry I said I didn't want to talk to you. I was sad because Mommy cried. But now I know it's not your fault. I miss you. I still have your drawing set. I made a picture of a tree for you. Love, Lily." I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat on the porch holding the letter in both hands like it might evaporate if I blinked. It was the first thing in months that didn't feel poisoned. Mark found me an hour later. "Are you okay?" I nodded slowly. She remembers who I am. We didn't reply right away. Joanne advised caution. "Carla still has supervised custody. Anything you send could be intercepted, used." But in the end, I sent Lily a small notebook with unlined pages, and a single sentence written on the inside cover. "One day I'll show you where the trees grow wild." I didn't expect more. As for Carla, Eleanor, and Walter, they disappeared. Quietly. Their reputations were bruised, their finances bleeding. Carla sold her house. Eleanor stopped showing up at church socials. Walter withdrew completely. They didn't reach out. Not to apologize. Not to explain. And I didn't chase them. I didn't need them to understand anymore. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't a door you hold open forever. It's a choice you make for yourself. To stop dragging dead weight across every mile of your life. And once you make it, you realize something freeing. You can forgive someone without ever letting them back in. Mark and I scaled the business down. Sold off 2 branches, kept the original one. We reopened the workshop where it all began. Just us, a few apprentices, and the smell of fresh pine. We started teaching again, mentoring kids who had no support, no backup, no one who believed in them. One of them asked me, "Did your parents help you get started?" I looked at her and said, "No. But I helped myself. And sometimes that's enough." One evening, while organizing old boxes in the attic, I found the letter Grandma June had written me when I left for college. She'd been the only one who ever saw me. The only one who spoke truth in a house built on show. "Rebecca, if you're reading this, something probably hurts. Here's the thing. Some people will always love you less than you deserve. That's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to decide how long you let them make you smaller than you are. Let them go. Grow anyway. With all the fire in your heart, Grandma." I framed that letter and hung it above my desk in the studio. Because this isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about return. To self, to peace, to a life you choose, even when the people who gave you life never really chose you back.